The fluorescent lights of Outpost 47's auction house flickered uncertainly, casting strange shadows across the collection of derelict ships and salvaged equipment. Sarah Chen stood at the back of the crowd, her quantum diagnostic tablet clutched tightly against her worn coveralls. She'd spent her last credits just to get into this backwater station, hoping to find something, anything, that could help save her failing repair business back on Mars. The auctioneer, a cybernetically enhanced man with gleaming silver eyes, gestured toward the final lot of the day. And now, ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all designations, we have something unique. His voice carried a note of uncertainty that made Sarah lean forward. Salvaged from the Oort cloud, origin unknown. Our engineers have classified it as a ship, though its construction defies conventional analysis. The massive hangar doors ground open, revealing a vessel unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. Its hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid mercury, but with a darker, almost violet undertone. Where most ships had clear lines defining their structure, this one appeared to exist in a state of constant flux, its surface rippling with patterns that made her eyes hurt if she looked too long. Starting bid at 50,000 credits, the auctioneer announced, his voice echoing through the suddenly silent chamber. Sarah checked her tablet. She had exactly 52,403 credits left to her name. The crowd murmured, but no hands went up. The ship's strange appearance had scared off the usual buyers. 40,000. The auctioneer tried again, desperation creeping into his voice. Still no takers. Sarah's quantum scanner was picking up readings that made absolutely no sense. The energy signatures weren't just unusual, they were impossible. 30,000. Now the auctioneer sounded almost pleading. Sarah's mind raced. The readings suggested technology far beyond current human understanding, but they also indicated potential instability that could tear apart a small moon. It was either the discovery of a lifetime or a catastrophe waiting to happen. 20,000. The price had dropped to less than half her savings. Sarah's hand shot up before she could stop herself. The auctioneer's cybernetic eyes focused on her with visible relief. Sold. To the woman in the back. As the crowd dispersed, Sarah approached her new acquisition. Up close, the ship's hull seemed to respond to her presence, the rippling patterns subtly shifting toward her position. Her diagnostic tablet was going haywire, displaying quantum probability curves that should have been theoretical. "You're making a mistake," a voice said behind her. Sarah turned to find a tall woman in an immaculate corporate suit, her dark hair streaked with silver. "That ship isn't safe for human operation. My organization would be willing to take it off your hands for twice what you paid." Sarah smiled tightly. "Thanks, but I think I'll hold on to it." The woman's offer only confirmed Sarah's suspicion. This ship was worth far more than anyone at the auction had realized. "I don't think you understand the gravity of the situation," the woman continued, her tone hardening. "That vessel operates on principles that violate our understanding of physics. It's not just dangerous, it's impossible." "Impossible is just another word for unexplored," Sarah replied, turning back to her ship. She'd spent her career pushing the boundaries of quantum mechanics, finding ways to repair technology that others deemed beyond salvation. This ship might be her greatest challenge yet, but it was also her last chance to prove her theories about quantum integration weren't just dreams. The corporate woman's heels clicked against the metal floor as she walked away. "You'll be hearing from us again, Ms. Chen." Sarah barely registered the threat, her attention captured by new readings from her tablet. The ship's quantum signature was stabilizing, its patterns aligning with her own bioelectric field. It was as if the vessel was recognizing her presence, adapting to her proximity. She placed her hand against the hull, and the metal rippled beneath her touch like water. A surge of information flooded her neural implant, fragments of data in languages she didn't recognize, but the underlying mathematical principles were clear. This ship didn't just bend space, it manipulated the quantum fabric of reality itself. Warning klaxons suddenly blared through the hangar. Sarah's tablet showed massive energy fluctuations emanating from the ship's core. The quantum field was destabilizing, threatening to tear a hole in space-time right there in the auction house. Without thinking, Sarah pressed her hand harder against the hull, mentally projecting the quantum-dampening equations she'd developed for stabilizing damaged warp cores. The ship's surface pulsed once, twice, and then the energy readings began to normalize. The klaxons fell silent. "That's impossible," a technician muttered nearby, staring at his own readings. "The quantum cascade should have destroyed half the station." Sarah smiled. She'd spent years studying theoretical quantum mechanics, developing mathematical models that her peers dismissed as fantasy. But she'd always known there was more to quantum interaction than the established theories allowed for. This ship was proof. As the maintenance crews nervously dispersed, Sarah began systematically scanning different sections of the hull, building a preliminary map of the ship's quantum architecture. The more data she collected, the more convinced she became that this vessel represented technology far beyond current human capabilities. Its systems operated on principles that shouldn't have been possible for centuries to come. The ship's surface continued to respond to her presence, the rippling patterns forming complex geometric shapes that seemed to correspond to her scanning patterns. It was almost as if the vessel was trying to communicate, sharing information through quantum resonance rather than conventional data transfer. Sarah's neural implant struggled to process the incoming data. Among the stream of incomprehensible symbols and equations, one clear message formed. Integration protocols initiated. New pilot candidate identified. A smile spread across Sarah's face. She'd just spent her last credits on a ship that defied the laws of physics, was probably dangerous, and had already attracted unwanted attention from powerful organizations. But for the first time in years, she felt alive with possibility. This ship wasn't just a chance to save her business. It was an opportunity to prove that humanity's understanding of the universe was just beginning. As she began preparing for transport to her workshop on Mars, Sarah's quantum scanner detected a new pattern emerging in the ship's hull. The rippling surface was forming complex fractals that matched theoretical models for quantum computing architecture. The vessel wasn't just responding to her presence, it was rebuilding itself, integrating with her neural patterns. "Well," she muttered, patching through to Mars traffic control to file her flight plan. This should be interesting. She had no idea just how right she was, or that her purchase would soon draw her into a conflict that would challenge not just her understanding of physics, but the very nature of reality itself. The Martian sunset cast long shadows through the windows of Sarah's workshop, painting the mysterious ship in shades of deep crimson. After 3 days of continuous work, she'd managed to set up a containment field to stabilize the vessel's quantum fluctuations, but that was just the beginning. Every answer led to 10 new questions, and her neural implant was struggling to process the flood of data the ship kept trying to share. Sarah wiped sweat from her forehead, leaving a streak of metallic lubricant across her skin. The ship's hull had finally stopped its constant rippling, settling into what she hoped was a dormant state. Her quantum diagnostic tools were spread across a makeshift workbench, most of them modified far beyond their original specifications to handle the impossible readings the ship produced. "All right," she muttered, adjusting her scanner's frequency. "Let's try this again." She pressed her palm against the hull, and the ship responded immediately. The surface beneath her hand became almost liquid, forming intricate patterns that pulsed in sync with her heartbeat. Suddenly, the air around her shimmered, and the workshop seemed to fade away. Sarah found herself standing in what appeared to be the ship's control center, but it wasn't empty. Translucent figures moved around her, their forms flickering like holograms. They weren't human. Their bodies were too tall, too angular, with too many joints in their limbs. One of the figures was frantically manipulating controls that shifted and reformed under its touch. "The breach is expanding," it said in a language Sarah somehow understood, though she knew she'd never heard it before. "The quantum cascade will reach critical mass in." The vision vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Sarah gasping. Her neural implant was firing warning signals, overwhelmed by the quantum data surge. But she'd seen something crucial: the ship's original crew, caught in some kind of temporal echo. Time signatures detected in quantum matrix, her tablet announced, displaying a series of complicated equations, multiple temporal vectors intersecting with current timeline. Sarah's hands flew across her workstation, trying to capture and analyze the data before it degraded. The ship wasn't just advanced technology. It was somehow preserving moments from its past, stored in quantum states throughout its structure. A soft chime from her security system interrupted her work. Someone was approaching the workshop. Sarah quickly activated her external cameras, unsurprised to see a sleek corporate shuttle landing outside. The woman from the auction house stepped out, accompanied by two others wearing what looked like military-grade combat suits. Sarah triggered her workshop's security protocols, then turned back to the ship. She had minutes at most before they reached her door, and she needed answers. Pressing her hand against the hull again, she focused on projecting the simple question through her neural interface. "What are you?" The response came in a burst of quantum data that nearly overloaded her implant. Images, equations, and concepts flooded her mind. The ship was a quantum computer made manifest, designed to navigate not just through space, but through the quantum probability landscape itself. It could perceive and interact with multiple timelines simultaneously, using principles that made Earth's most advanced quantum theories look like child's play. A heavy knock echoed through the workshop. "Ms. Chen," the corporate woman's voice called out, "we need to discuss your recent acquisition. Please open the door." Sarah ignored them, her attention fixed on a new set of readings. The ship's quantum core was active, its energy signature matching patterns she'd only seen theorized in cutting-edge research papers about quantum tunneling and timeline manipulation. "This is your final warning," the woman announced. "That vessel is the property of the Quantum Preservation Initiative. Failure to comply will result in immediate action." The ship's surface suddenly came alive with swirling patterns, responding to Sarah's rising stress levels. Her neural implant registered a massive surge in quantum activity, and for a moment, the workshop seemed to split into multiple overlapping versions of itself. Sarah saw herself in various scenarios, opening the door, hiding, attempting to flee. But in every timeline where she surrendered the ship, disaster followed. The quantum echoes showed her fragments of devastation, worlds torn apart by forces she barely understood. The door's security panel sparked as someone began overriding its controls. Sarah made her decision. She pressed both hands against the ship's hull, mentally projecting the startup sequence she pieced together from the quantum data. Integration protocols activated, her neural implant announced. Quantum core online. Timeline navigation systems initializing. The ship's surface flowed like quicksilver, an entrance forming beneath Sarah's hands. Behind her, the workshop doors slid open with a hiss of compressed air. The corporate woman stepped through, flanked by her guards. "Step away from the vessel, Ms. Chen," she ordered, raising what looked like a quantum disruption device. "You have no idea what forces you're dealing with." Sarah smiled grimly. "Actually, I think I'm starting to understand." She stepped backward through the ship's entrance, which sealed instantly behind her. The interior was a maze of shifting surfaces and floating holographic displays, all pulsing with quantum energy. Through the hull, she heard the woman shouting orders, but it was too late. Sarah's neural implant was fully synchronized with the ship's systems now, giving her access to controls that operated on principles she was only beginning to grasp. The quantum core hummed to life, and Sarah felt reality flex around her. The ship wasn't just capable of spaceflight. It could slide between quantum states, moving through possibilities as easily as conventional ships moved through space. Timeline shift initiated, her implant announced. Quantum probability matrix realigning. The workshop, the corporate agents, and the Martian landscape began to fade, replaced by the swirling chaos of quantum space. Sarah had no idea where or when. She would emerge, but she knew one thing with certainty. She was about to discover exactly what this ship was capable of, and why everyone was so desperate to control it. As the quantum shift reached its peak, Sarah caught one final glimpse of her workshop through the ship's sensors. The corporate woman was staring at where the ship had been, her face a mask of carefully controlled fury. "Find her," she was saying into a communicator. "She has no idea what she's about to trigger." Then reality itself seemed to twist, and Sarah Chen, quantum mechanic and accidental pilot of an impossible ship, vanished from normal spacetime, leaving behind a mystery that would soon become a legend in the annals of human space exploration. Reality crystallized around Sarah, like ice forming on a window, fractal patterns of possibility, collapsing into a single present moment. The ship had emerged from its quantum jump in high orbit around what looked like Earth, except the continents were all wrong. Australia stretched nearly to Indonesia, and there was no sign of the Mediterranean Sea. Timeline variance detected, her neural implant announced. Current reality divergence, 47.3% from origin point. Sarah's mind raced with the implications. The ship hadn't just moved through space. It had shifted into an alternate timeline, a parallel Earth where history had taken a different course. Her quantum mechanics research had suggested such realities might exist, but experiencing one firsthand was something else entirely. The ship's internal displays showed streams of data that would have been incomprehensible days ago, but her neural connection with the vessel was growing stronger. She could feel the quantum core's energy flowing through the ship's systems, maintaining a delicate balance between multiple states of reality. Warning: the ship's AI fragmented across her consciousness. Timeline instability detected. Quantum collapse imminent in adjacent probability streams. The displays shifted, showing her something that defied description, a visualization of nearby timelines, each one a distinct thread in the fabric of reality. Several of these threads were unraveling, their quantum structures breaking down at a fundamental level. A familiar voice echoed through her mind, one of the alien time echoes she'd witnessed before. "The cascade cannot be contained. Reality itself is coming undone." The voice held notes of desperation and defeat, emotions that transcended species barriers. Sarah focused on the quantum data flooding through her implant. The ship's previous crew had failed to stop whatever disaster they'd faced, but they'd left behind fragments of their knowledge, encoded in the quantum structure of the vessel itself. If she could just piece it together. Her concentration was broken by a surge of energy that rocked the ship. Another vessel had appeared nearby, emerging from its own quantum jump. Its design was clearly human, but advanced beyond anything Sarah had seen before. Her sensors identified quantum technology similar to her own ship's, but cruder, more brutally implemented. Sarah Chen, a familiar voice, came through on all frequencies. It was the corporate woman from the auction. "This is Director Vale of the Quantum Preservation Initiative. Stand down and prepare for boarding." "How did you follow me?" Sarah demanded, though she was already analyzing the sensor data for answers. "We've been tracking quantum anomalies like your ship for decades," Vale replied. "Did you think you were the first to discover the multiverse? Your vessel is part of something much larger, a war that threatens to destroy not just one universe, but all possible realities." The ship's quantum core pulsed in response to Vale's words, and another time echo manifested around Sarah. She saw the original crew again, but this time they were in combat, their ship dancing through quantum space as they battled enemies she couldn't quite see. "The Void Seekers cannot be allowed to succeed," one of the alien figures was saying. "If they breach the quantum barrier between universes, the cascade will." The echo faded before she could hear the end. "Your ship was built by the archivists," Vale continued, her voice taking on an almost reverent tone. "They were the guardians of reality itself, fighting to preserve the quantum stability of the multiverse. But they lost their war, Ms. Chen. Now all that remains are fragments like your vessel, and the catastrophe they tried to prevent is finally coming to pass." Sarah's mind was racing, connecting pieces of the puzzle. The ship's quantum architecture, its ability to process multiple timeline data simultaneously, the desperate echoes of its former crew. It all pointed to a single, terrifying conclusion. The timeline collapse, she said. It's not just affecting a few alternate realities, is it? It's spreading. Like cancer through the quantum fabric of existence, Vale confirmed. We've been trying to contain it, but our understanding of quantum mechanics is primitive compared to the archivists. Your ship might be our last hope. The quantum core suddenly surged, and Sarah's neural implant was flooded with new data. The ship was showing her something. A pattern in the quantum decay, a mathematical sequence she recognized from her own research into quantum stability. You're wrong, Sarah said, her fingers flying across the holographic controls as she applied principles of quantum mechanics that she'd only theorized before. The collapse isn't spreading randomly. It's following a specific quantum frequency, like a wave propagating through. She stopped as the implications hit her. The archivists hadn't failed. They'd sacrificed themselves, using their own timeline as a quantum firebreak to stop the collapse. But they'd known it would only be temporary. Your ship's quantum core is resonating with the collapse, Vale warned. Whatever you're doing, stop before you trigger a cascading failure. But Sarah barely heard her. She was deep in the quantum mathematics now, seeing patterns that she'd glimpsed in her theoretical work, but had never been able to fully grasp until this moment. The ship wasn't just showing her the problem, it was showing her a solution. The archivists didn't just build ships, she said, understanding flooding through her. They built quantum anchors, points of stability in the chaos of timeline collapse. This ship isn't running from the disaster, it's trying to prevent it. The vessel's displays confirmed her theory, showing how its quantum core could be used to reinforce the fabric of reality itself. But the power requirements were astronomical, far beyond what any single ship could generate. Unless. Sarah's hands moved across the controls with newfound purpose. Director Vale, she said, I'm sending you some quantum equations. Tell me if they match anything in your research. There was a long pause before Vale responded, her voice tight with controlled excitement. These are similar to formulas we discovered in the quantum ruins on Titan. We could never make them work, but with your ship's core as a template, we can rebuild the quantum anchor network, Sarah finished. Not just contain the collapse, but reverse it. The ship's AI fragments seemed to resonate with her plan, the quantum core humming with increased power. Sarah felt reality flex around her as the vessel prepared for another jump. This is bigger than your initiative, Director, she said. I'm going to need your help, but we do this my way. The archivists left this ship for someone to find, not to preserve their way of doing things, but to find a new solution, a human solution. As if in response to her words, the ship's quantum core pulsed with renewed energy, and Sarah felt the familiar sensation of reality beginning to shift. She was about to attempt something that even the archivists hadn't considered, using human intuition and creativity to solve a problem that had stumped an ancient civilization. The universe, all universes, were about to learn what humanity could really do when pushed to the quantum edge of existence. The quantum mathematics scrolled across Sarah's vision like digital rain, each equation representing another piece of the universal puzzle. She stood in the initiative's quantum research lab on Titan, surrounded by holographic displays showing timeline decay patterns across multiple realities. Director Vale watched intently as Sarah's fingers danced through the air, manipulating quantum probability curves with practiced ease. The archivist's approach was fundamentally flawed, Sarah explained, highlighting a particular sequence of quantum resonances. They tried to build walls between realities, using their technology to isolate timeline clusters. But quantum mechanics doesn't work that way. The more you try to separate quantum states, the more they want to entangle. Vale frowned, her cybernetic eyes tracking the data streams. Our research suggested the same thing, but we couldn't find an alternative. The quantum cascade breaks down any barriers we try to establish. Exactly, Sarah said, grinning. So we stopped trying to fight it. Instead of building walls, we build bridges, She gestured, and her ship's AI projected a new set of equations into the shared space. The quantum core doesn't just move through alternate timelines. It can link them, create stable quantum tunnels between realities. The lab's sensors suddenly blared warnings. On the main display, another cluster of timelines began to unravel, the quantum decay spreading like cracks through glass. Sarah felt the disturbance through her neural link with the ship, reality itself screaming as it came apart at the seams. "We're running out of time," Vale said, her composed exterior cracking slightly. "Even with your ship's capabilities, we can't possibly establish enough quantum tunnels to stabilize the entire multiverse. The power requirements alone." "We don't have to," Sarah interrupted, pulling up her latest calculations. "Look at the decay pattern. It's not random. It's following quantum resonance lines, like ripples in a pond. If we can modify those resonances." She trailed off as a new set of time echoes flickered through the lab. The ghostly forms of archivist scientists moved around them, their own calculations and theories playing out in spectral displays. Sarah had learned to interpret these echoes, understanding now that they weren't just memories. They were quantum imprints of possibilities that had been and could be again. "They almost saw it," she murmured, watching an archivist reach for the same conclusion she had before the echo faded. They were so close to understanding, but they were too focused on preservation. They couldn't see that evolution was the answer. Vale stepped closer to the main display, studying the quantum decay patterns with new interest. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A quantum neural network," Sarah said, her excitement building. "Instead of trying to separate or contain different timelines, we link them together. Create a self-stabilizing system that uses the natural tendency toward quantum entanglement to our advantage. The power requirements would be distributed across multiple realities, each timeline contributing to the stability of the whole." "That's..." Vale shook her head in disbelief. "That's either brilliant or completely insane. The computational complexity alone would be beyond anything we've ever attempted." Sarah placed her hand on her ship's hull, feeling the quantum core pulse in response. That's where the archivist's technology comes in. Their quantum cores weren't just designed for navigation. They were nodes in a vast network. "My ship isn't trying to prevent the collapse. It's trying to rebuild that network. But this time, we do it differently." A sudden tremor ran through the station as another quantum shockwave hit. Warning lights flashed across every display as reality fluctuated around them. Through her neural link, Sarah felt timeline variants splitting and recombining at a dizzying rate. "We need to move now," Vale said, already sending orders through her comm system. "How many quantum cores do you need?" "All of them," Sarah replied, her fingers flying across her ship's interface. "Every piece of archivist technology you've recovered, every quantum-capable ship you've built. We're going to link them all together and create the biggest quantum computer ever conceived, one that spans multiple universes." Vale's expression hardened. "The Initiative's Council will never approve this. The risk of catastrophic failure is still better than certain annihilation." Sarah finished. "Look at your own data, Director. The timeline collapse is accelerating. We have hours, maybe minutes, before the quantum cascade reaches a point of no return." As if to emphasize her point, another series of reality tremors shook the station. Through the quantum sensors, Sarah watched in horror as entire timeline clusters began to disintegrate, probability waves collapsing into chaos. "Even if we commit all our resources," Vale said, already keying emergency authorization codes into her terminal, "we'll only have one shot at this, if your theory is wrong." "It's not wrong," Sarah interrupted, her certainty born from both mathematical proof and human intuition. The archivists built their technology to be adapted, to evolve. They knew they wouldn't find the final solution. They were leaving breadcrumbs for someone else to follow, someone who could see patterns they couldn't. The station's quantum alarms reached a fever pitch as reality continued to unravel around them. Sarah felt her ship's fragments becoming more agitated, sensing the approaching catastrophe. But there was something else in their quantum pulses now, a recognition, an alignment with her plan that felt like approval. "Director Vale," she said, watching as the Initiative's fleet of quantum-modified ships began to emerge from their hangars, "I hope you're ready to make history. We're about to rewrite the laws of quantum mechanics." Vale's response was cut off by another reality tremor, this one strong enough to flicker the station's artificial gravity. But Sarah barely noticed. Her mind was already deep in the quantum calculations, preparing for what would either be the salvation of all reality or its final collapse. The universe had dealt humanity an impossible problem, one that had defeated even the mighty archivists. But humans had a long history of turning impossible problems into improbable victories. Now it was time to prove that humanity's greatest strength wasn't just its technology or its determination, but its ability to see solutions where others saw only chaos. As Sarah synchronized her ship's quantum core with the Initiative's fleet, she smiled grimly. They were about to attempt the largest quantum engineering project in history, spanning multiple universes and breaking half the laws of physics in the process. It was exactly the kind of ridiculous, ambitious plan that humans did best. The quantum network hummed across realities, a web of possibility anchored by Sarah's archivist ship at its heart. Dozens of Initiative vessels maintained formation around them, their modified quantum cores synchronized in a delicate dance of mathematics and energy. Through her neural link, Sarah could feel the strain on reality itself as they prepared to attempt something unprecedented in any timeline. "Quantum cores at 90% synchronization," Vale reported from her command station. The director's usual composure was cracking under the pressure of watching multiple timeline clusters collapse around them. "The cascade is approaching critical mass. We need to act now." Sarah's fingers flew across the holographic controls, making final adjustments to the quantum equations that would either save or destroy everything. "The network isn't stable enough yet. If we initiate too early, the feedback loop could tear apart every connected timeline." Another reality tremor rocked the fleet, stronger than any before. Sarah watched through the quantum sensors as entire probability streams simply ceased to exist, leaving holes in the fabric of the multiverse. The void wasn't just consuming individual timelines anymore. It was accelerating, growing exponentially with each reality it devoured. "We're detecting quantum signatures," one of Vale's officers announced. "Similar to archivist technology, but wrong somehow. They're emerging from the collapse points." Sarah felt her ship's eye fragments pulse with recognition and alarm. Through their quantum link, she saw fragments of memories. The final battles of the Archivists' war, facing enemies that wielded twisted versions of their own technology. The Void Seekers weren't just trying to destroy reality. They were harvesting it, using the energy of collapsing timelines to fuel their own existence. "They're coming through," Vale said grimly. "Whatever the Archivists were fighting, we're about to meet them ourselves." The quantum sensors screamed as reality tore open around the fleet. Ships emerged from the breach. Dark mirrors of archivist vessels, their quantum cores pulsing with impossible energies. Sarah felt reality buckling around them, twisting under the influence of technologies meant to break rather than preserve. "All ships, maintain formation." Vale ordered as weapons fire began to streak across the quantum-twisted space. "We cannot lose synchronization." Sarah barely heard the battle erupting around them. Her attention was focused on the quantum mathematics flowing through her neural link, watching as the network adapted and evolved. The Void Seeker's presence was actually helping, their twisted quantum signatures providing the final piece of the puzzle she hadn't even known she was missing. "They didn't fail," she whispered, understanding flooding through her. "The Archivists didn't fail at all. This is exactly what they planned for." Vale glanced at her sharply. "What are you talking about?" "Look at the quantum resonance patterns," Sarah said, projecting the data for everyone to see. "The Void Seeker's technology, the timeline collapse, even my ship finding its way to that auction. It's all part of the same equation. The Archivists weren't trying to stop the collapse. They were setting up the conditions for someone else to solve it." Through her quantum link, Sarah felt her ship's fragments pulse with confirmation. The archivists had known their civilization's approach would never work. They were too bound by their own preconceptions, too locked into their way of thinking. They needed someone who could see patterns differently, who could take their technology and use it in ways they'd never imagined. They needed humanity's chaos factor. "All ships, prepare for quantum sync," Sarah announced, her voice carrying across all frequencies. "We're not going to fight the collapse or the void seekers. We're going to complete the archivist's final project, and we're going to do it our way." Her hands danced across the controls, implementing changes to the quantum network that would have given the archivists nightmares. Instead of trying to separate realities or contain the collapse, she began linking everything together. The Initiative's fleet, the Void Seeker ships, even the collapse points themselves. Every quantum signature, every timeline variance, every possibility stream became part of a vast, interconnected web. "Chen, what are you doing?" Vale demanded as reality began to twist in new and impossible ways. "The power readings are off the scale. Remember what I said about quantum entanglement?" Sarah replied. Her consciousness expanded across the network. "The more you try to separate quantum states, the more they want to connect. So let's stop fighting it. Let's take every timeline, every possibility, every quantum state, and link them all together." The Void Seekers seemed to realize what she was attempting. Their attacks became desperate, but it was too late. The quantum network was spreading exponentially now, using their own corrupted cores as amplifiers. Sarah felt reality flex and bend around them as possibilities multiplied and merged. "Quantum singularity forming," someone reported, their voice filled with awe and terror. It's rewriting local spacetime." Sarah smiled as the final pieces fell into place. The archivists had built their technology to preserve and separate, while the Void Seekers sought to destroy and consume. But humanity had found a third option: integration, adaptation, evolution. Instead of fighting the quantum cascade, they were riding it, using its power to reshape reality itself. The singularity expanded, engulfing their fleet, the Void Seekers, and the collapse points in a sphere of pure quantum potential. Inside that sphere, every possibility existed simultaneously, every timeline connected and strengthening each other. The void wasn't being stopped or contained, it was being transformed, becoming part of a new kind of multiverse. "Quantum stabilization achieving critical mass," Sarah announced, feeling the change ripple through every connected reality. "The network is self-sustaining. We did it." As the quantum sphere continued to expand, Sarah felt her ship's fragments pulse with something that felt like joy. The archivists had given humanity the tools, trusting that they would find a solution no other civilization could imagine. And in true human fashion, they had solved an impossible problem by simply refusing to accept its impossibility. The Void Seeker ships began to fade, their corrupted quantum cores adapting to the new reality matrix. They weren't being destroyed. They were being integrated, becoming part of the very system they had tried to tear apart. "Status report," Vale demanded, her voice steadier now. "What exactly did we just do?" Sarah watched through the quantum sensors as the new reality matrix continued to spread, stabilizing and strengthening the fabric of the multiverse. "We just revealed what the archivists knew all along, that the true power of quantum mechanics isn't in separation or destruction, but in connection. Every timeline, every possibility, every quantum state working together to create something greater than the sum of its parts." As the quantum readings settled into new patterns, Sarah felt her ship's eye achieving a clarity it had never known before. The fragments were whole again, but different. Evolved, like the reality they now inhabited. The archivist's legacy hadn't been preserved. It had been transformed into something new, something that combined their wisdom with humanity's innovative spirit. "We make a pretty good team," Sarah said to no one in particular, feeling the quantum network pulse with life and possibility. Turns out all the multiverse needed was a little human chaos to set things right. Around them, reality continued to shift and settle into its new configuration. The void had been transformed from a force of destruction into a source of infinite potential, and humanity, true to form, had just rewritten the laws of quantum mechanics by refusing to accept that they couldn't be changed. It wasn't the solution the archivists had envisioned, but it was exactly the one they had hoped humanity would find.